Have you ever wished you could just send a thought? Not explain it, not describe it, but have someone else get it directly from your mind to theirs? Well, for more than 100 years, that's been one of the biggest obsessions in science fiction, the hive mind.
So, let's break this down. A hive mind is basically a collective consciousness. It's where individual minds, individual people, all merge together into one single thinking entity. It's a really cool idea, but also kind of creepy, right? It's basically taking the teamwork you see in an ant colony and scaling it up to the level of human consciousness. And once you start looking, you see this idea everywhere. It goes way back to H.G. Wells, but, for most of us, the big one is the Borg from Star Trek. That whole resistance is futile thing? From Stephen King novels to shows like Stranger Things, we just can't stop telling stories about what happens when you lose yourself to become part of something bigger. But here's the kicker. What if it isn't just a story anymore? So in this explainer, that's exactly what we're going to explore. First, we'll ask, is this stuff still just sci-fi? Then, we'll get into the actual technologies that are being built right now to create collective minds. After that, we'll look at the huge philosophical crisis this kicks off for our idea of the individual. We'll check out the new neuro rights people are proposing to protect us. And finally, we'll tackle the big one. Are we really headed for a hive mind? Okay, first things first, is any of this actually happening? The answer, and this might surprise you, is a loud and clear yes. This is not just theory. The field of brain-to-brain interfacing, or BBI, is exploding. Scientists are making real progress on systems that let brains talk directly to each other. This whole concept is officially moving out of the sci-fi aisle and into the science lab. So what does this technology even look like? Well, it's not just one thing. Think of it more like a spectrum of different tools that are connecting our minds in new ways. At the simplest end of this spectrum, you've got something called digiminds. And guess what? You're already part of one. I'm part of one. This is the stuff we use every single day. Social media, text messages, Zoom calls. They connect our brains just indirectly through screens and keyboards. It's the world we're all living in. Now we take a huge step up to what are called uniminds. This is where it gets way more direct. We are talking about actual brain-to-brain interfaces. One person, the sender, can literally send a signal straight into the brain of a receiver. Get this. In a real 2019 experiment called BrainNet, 3 people played a game kind of like Tetris, using only their minds. The senders would think about rotating a block, and that signal would be sent to the receiver, who would then make the move. Wild. Okay, next up, netminds. These take a totally different angle. It's less about a direct link between 2 people and more about massive scale collaboration. You ever heard of swarm intelligence? The idea is modeled on how a flock of birds or a school of fish moves together. These algorithms can take tiny inputs from thousands of people and combine them to make shockingly accurate decisions, way better than any single expert could. And that brings us to the end of the spectrum, macrominds. This is it. This is the sci-fi concept made real. It's a technology that's both super direct, like the mind meld game, and super directional, like the swarm. Imagine a whole network of brains, all directly linked, all sending and receiving information to each other all at once. This is the true multi-way brain hookup, and it's the one that opens up a massive can of ethical worms. Because the moment we start building these things, we slam right into a huge philosophical wall. This technology doesn't just threaten our privacy, it threatens the very idea of what it means to be you. I mean, think about it. Our entire society, especially in the West, is built on the idea of individualism. The rights of the single person, their freedom, their property, that's what we value most. But this technology points toward a totally collectivist future, where the group mind is what matters, and where your own personal thoughts and desires could literally be sacrificed for the good of the network. And it's so easy to forget that this whole concept of the individual that we love so much, it's not some ancient truth. It's actually a pretty new invention. It was really only a few hundred years ago that thinkers like Hobbes and Locke started laying the groundwork. Before that, for most of human history, who you were was tied up in your tribe, your village, your family, not just you. And here's where it gets really interesting. This technological tidal wave is hitting us at the exact same moment that philosophers are also starting to question the whole idea of the individual. Thinkers today are suggesting that our idea of a single, stable self might just be an illusion, and that we're heading into a new era after the human. It's like a perfect storm of technology and philosophy, and they're both pushing us in the same direction. So if our very sense of self is on the chopping block, how in the world do we protect it? Well, that brings us to this brand new idea of neurorights, basically a new rulebook for our minds. You know, people call the brain the final frontier of privacy for a reason. If somebody can get in there, what's left to call your own? How do we make sure our thoughts, our memories, our actual personality stays ours? This is the massive challenge that's making experts say we need a whole new class of human rights. And they've come up with 4 big ones. First, cognitive liberty. That's your right to control your own brain. Simple. Second, mental privacy. The right to keep your thoughts from being hacked and harvested. Third, mental integrity. The right to protect your mind from being messed with against your will. And finally, psychological continuity. This is the right to feel like the same person from one day to the next, to protect your core identity. And don't think this is just some fantasy legal debate. Researchers are pushing for concrete policies right now. They're making specific recommendations, like saying we should be very careful about using this text for human enhancement, and, most importantly, that we need to write things like mental privacy into our actual laws as fundamental human rights. All right, let's pull all of this together. We've got the tech, we've got the huge philosophical questions, we've even got some proposed new rules. So where does that leave us? Are we actually going to end up in a hive mind? Well, maybe the future isn't that simple. This quote really makes you stop and think. What if we achieve this amazing, super intelligent collective consciousness? But in doing so, we create something that experiences a kind of loneliness we can't even imagine. By becoming one giant I, we might lose the very us that gives life meaning. A perfect mind, totally alone in the universe. Which leaves us with one last, really provocative thought to chew on. We think of ourselves, our individuality, as this fundamental, permanent thing, but maybe it's just a phase, a brief chapter in human history that started a few hundred years ago and is now ending, giving way to something new, something more connected. Are we witnessing the beginning of the end for the individual? And if we are, what on earth comes next?